Bubbles. Dark basement. Scuttles. Fingernails.
Hey witches, it's Rose. This month the crew is going to discuss the impacts of Hollywood and witchcraft. Be sure to subscribe on our website, greatnorthwitches.com, in order to receive our monthly newsletter, and we'll have some extra witchy things in there. But without further ado, here's the crew.
My name is Corey. I am a eclectic gray bone witch. I've been in practice for about 20 years, here to have fun.
Hey guys, it's Nikka. I'm an eclectic Celtic pagan.
Hi, it's Kyla. I'm a pantheist chaos witch.
Hello, this is Aiden. I am a hedge witch and work with necromancy.
Hi, I'm Kristen. I am a very new witch. My specialty is my intuition and reading tarot cards.
Hi, I'm Sammy. I am also a new witch, leaning more towards the green kitchen witch practice. I remember my first experience seeing a witch, and it was really late on TV with my sister. There's a TV channel called TV Land, and they played old shows, and it was Bewitched. Samantha and my sister thought it was the funniest thing, and I went around my house for weeks trying to twinkle my nose.
Now we're all doing it.
I think my first experience with a witch was The Wizard of Oz, and the tragic tale of the evil witch getting smashed by a house. And I never identified Glinda as a witch in my head. Like, it was always just the evil witch, the green and the hat and the nose, and that was the epitome of witch for me growing up. Glinda was a princess.
So my experience growing up with witches from Hollywood, the first one I can relate to or remember seeing was from The Craft. Our Ladies from the Four Corners. That was, to me, the very first set of witches that I ever knew.
I honestly can't remember the first one. It's either going to be Wizard of Oz, like Nikka's, or possibly be even Practical Magic. Going back is probably close enough to the first time I really saw something that was very close to what I considered witchcraft. And it's like, oh, yeah, that's a thing.
Yeah, I don't remember much either because I was born right in the middle of the 90s.
Way to make us all feel old.
Thank you.
But that was like the peak of like all the cool like witchcraft stuff, like 90s and early 2000s, and I was outside playing. And when I did see what I now know was supposed to be a witch, I didn't recognize those characters as witches. I didn't know what they were. But the first time I really understood at least like what the stereotype of a witch was when I was in elementary school. We went to go see a play with the class, and there was a witch over the cauldron. And I remember one classmate got so freaked out and she ran off crying. That's my first recollection of a witch, was in a play.
My first recollection was Sabrina the Teenage Witch, the original version. So it was a very wholesome kind of family, nothing ever goes wrong, or we'll figure it out within the half hour of TV time allotted.
My first exposure to the Hollywood witchcraft, I would say definitely probably stroked the flame of interest, because I thought it was really cool. And then with our family history, always being told that, we descended from gypsies, and it's just like, no, that's what I want to be.
For me, so when I officially recognized what a witch was at movies and stuff, I'm gonna say when I really paid attention to it, the first movie was The Craft for me. Still one of my favorites. I'm gonna say for some reason it ignited it for me too. It's not what made me pursue witchcraft, because I thought again it was just a Hollywood concept. But once I learned about the possibility that it was real, then I was like, oh, a lot of what they say actually makes sense.
For me, I find that it was a way for me to kind of channel that inner sort of fantasticalness within myself to sort of like, it just maybe kept me in touch with that without me knowing it, because I grew up in a kind of little bit strict Irish Catholic home where we definitely did not talk about witches, and then if we did, it was the automatic negative assumption, kind of like, oh, you're going to use your powers for the wrong reason. So I think it just sort of, it just reassured me that I knew, like, okay, like maybe there are actual people out there that are like this. So it just sort of like kept that like little seed in me.
Like you, I didn't have the ability to be really affected by witchcraft in movies and TV shows because Christianity. It wasn't until I actually watched Outlander and saw Claire in her herbs that I was like, oh, that's a thing, and like it can still be used. And then I just ended up like the universe just kind of like dominoes, things just kept aligning over and over again. And I was like, okay, well, all right, Claire. So we just keep going.
So my exposure from Hollywood witches played a part in the beginning of my craft. I would say it gave me a foundation to work from. I've evolved a lot from that. So the movie that I was most in tune with was The Craft. And what about it was each one of the girls came from a different witch tower, or watchtower, sorry. And it was the four elements, it was the four corners, it just made sense. And to me, that was something that built the foundation of my craft, allowing me to grow from there. Trust me, I was never good at calling on no watchtowers, and they certainly did not help me in any which way. The elements certainly did, and from there, it just grew.
I think it's interesting to look back on how I think The Wizard of Oz really influenced me, because I think even back then, I mean, because like I was very small when I first saw this movie, and I was always drawn to the Wicked Witch. I was always drawn to that dark side, that creepy, like it's just always been my thing. I've always been kind of interested in that. I always felt bad for her, you know, like her sister got murdered by a house dropping on her, and the bitch that stole her shoes, like I felt bad for her. I never really looked at her as like a wicked, you know, I was like, I do that too, man. She stole my shoes. I want my fucking shoes back.
I think there's a strong stigma when it comes to witches.
Yeah.
And how they're presented physically. Comparing a pretty witch and then an ugly witch, a lot of people associate witches as being either that old hag with the big nose and the warts on the end, or some fantastic wizard with a wand. And in truth, it's not like that. It's the reality is we look like just everybody else, but on the inside
We all come in all shapes and sizes.
that's right.
I think you can notice in movies and TV shows that like typically the stereotypical ugly witch is more evil, and the more stereotypical beautiful people are the nice, like
They're the good witches.
cute. I can't think of much. There's Mother Gotham in in Tangled. She's pretty when she's using the power, but if you take it away, she's not.
Also in the movie Hansel and Gretel,
Mm-hmm.
where the head evil witch, she looks absolutely beautiful, but it's a glamour
Yeah.
that she doesn't look like that. They're evil and they're rotting, and but they could look beautiful, and it's just they're using their power. So it's like, even if a evil one is beautiful in the beginning, it's like it's stereotypical for it to just be cut away going, no, she's not actually beautiful, she's hideous,
Right.
because she's evil. That it's very seldom where a evil witch stays beautiful.
Yeah. I've seen it considered like that's the cost of their magic is their beauty.
I love the new trend with witches in media where like I think the new version of Sabrina the Teenage Witch is a really good example of that. The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. There you go.
Love that one.
I'm currently going on like my 4th run through
so
it.
good.
Like, I'm so obsessed. It's ridiculous. But I think she's a really great example of like, she's that character that you kind of hate to love and love to hate. You know, like and all of the characters on the show, really. I mean, like, let's be honest, that the show starts and they're all worshiping Satan. which by most people's standards is not something you typically want to glorify, but they glorify it pretty damn well in that show. The first time I watched it, I walked around forever. Praise Satan. Praise Satan. It's great. But I think she's a really great example. Her and a lot of the characters on that show are people that you hate to love and love to hate at the same time, where they're very typically good-looking people, but they're kind of good, they're kind of not, they're kind of bad, they're kind of not, and
Like
they
Lilith.
don't like Lilith. Lilith is a prime example in that show too.
Like she's not
really
bad,
great.
but she's not good.
Right? I mean, she was supposed to be the villain, and by the end of it, she turns out to be almost a hero. And
Spoiler alert.
sorry, I mean, come on, that show's been done for how long now?
Well,
Go watch it.
With that one though, with Sabrina, the thing that I love the most about it is they showed them putting in the work. It wasn't just a wave of the hand and magic sparkles happened and then boom, there goes the spell. They actually had to work for their spell. They needed ingredients. They needed the right setting. They needed the right frame of mind and meditation, and they're putting in that mundane work for the magic.
Hearth Witch on YouTube is doing this series. She's only done one episode so far, but it was like fantastic, where she's actually breaking down and researching the truth in the show Sabrina and the actual witchcraft that's involved in it, and it's fascinating. It's really, really cool. It's a really cool representation of witchcraft as it stands. I mean, of course, it's still fantastical because it's television and it has to be, but I think it's really cool how well researched it was.
I find with the two roles, like you're either an evil witch or a good witch, they're really like putting what it is to be the experience of a witch like in two separate like little neat, boxes, when really no human being is ever 100% bad or 100% good. Like it doesn't allow for any of the crossover. And I mean, I think like probably most of us try to do as much good as we can, but there are those days and those situations where it calls for doing the bad stuff. The hypersexualization of witches and witchcraft in movies and TV show, I'm going to go back to the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, where in that show, they definitely like their sexuality is like very open. They're very open about it, and I find that so refreshing, because it's like sexuality has just been such a taboo topic for so many years, and I feel like now it's something we're kind of at least becoming more aware of and learning how to embrace it. So I don't know if I like the hypersexualization, but if it's like a healthy exploration of your sexuality, or like even sort of more niche stuff like S&M, then I think it's healthy to explore that.
I personally am all for the hypersexualization of it in the media. A, because it's awesome. B, I think it's like Kristen was saying, like I think it's really great to encourage that kind of exploration and to remove the taboo from it. I also find like being somebody who's typically like, because I'm a gothy kind of person, a lot of people will look at me and automatically presume that I'm into that kind of stuff, and they're not wrong. But there's the reason why I'm bringing this up is, I mean, my personal aesthetic is very common within witchcraft circles. It's the gothy kind of people, and I think there's a reason for that. I think people who are very alternative in the way that they present themselves physically are very alternative in the ways that they think and the ways that they act. And they're the ones that are going to be more likely to rebel against those stereotypes that you've got around sexuality and religion and stuff like that.
And also be a little more open with exploration and,
Yes.
Trying things that aren't normally looked upon as appropriate or anything like that. So it's like they're more open to
Exploration.
and experiences,
Yeah.
and where other people might be a little more shy because they're trying to, fit in, to be what they're comfortable. Like being a bad word for it is normal. It's not a bad thing. If that's who you are and that's where you're comfortable, that's great. Not saying one is better than the other, but it's like there's a lot more pressure on them to be a certain way, where the more gothy and that they're alternative, thank you. They're a little more like it's expected of them. So it's like they don't really feel ashamed about it because it's like, oh no, that's just normal for them, but you shouldn't do that because you're a good girl. Where it shouldn't be that way.
She's not pointing at you, Sam.
I think that witchcraft and the practice is a lot about self-exploration. And when I tried to dive into my practice the first time, you and I have talked about this, it was very much rooted in other people and what they were doing. And now that I have come back to my practice, having healed those wounds, it is definitely more about like, does this feel good for me? And that hypersexuality that you're talking about, that masculine and feminine energy and being able to step into that is definitely within that BDSM, S&M community, especially for people like me who can switch how they operate in that setting. Being able to tap into those two things and explore that within yourself, I think can help you. For me as a person, I can be very submissive or I can be very dominant.
Which makes you a switch.
Yes. Which allows me then to tap into that more like masculine or more feminine, I feel, aspect. And it's a lot of fun. And then being able to bring that to my practice and switch back and forth in what I'm interested in is.
Sorry, we're laughing at Kyla.
Okay, why is that
clinking her spoons?
Yeah, you're not laughing. Kyla's like the cat in the room. My gosh. What?
Oh my god.
I'm sorry, I tried to be quiet.
We need the shushing spoon. Okay, I'm going to take this from a different approach. The projection of hypersexuality in witchcraft, I find, comes from a different source as well. If you think back to our roots, a lot of times we practice in the nude. This was a normal practice for witches, not something that is stereotypically created in TV shows, but it actually was a truth. There was a lot of orgies, there was a lot of sex involved with a lot of the magic that women did because it was part of the grand feminine, right? Was the bodies were worshipped because we gave life. So is it surprising that they still do it to this day? It's a little different, but I think it's part of our roots and that should be embraced in one way or another.
For me, if we're talking specifically about the sexualization in the media or like in Hollywood and stuff like that, the only issue I have with it, even though I've loved a lot of these shows, is that the sex scenes and stuff like that is still for men. Let's face it, a lot of them are portraying 16-year-old girls in the shows, and the sex is, it's like regular sex that a teenager might have. I don't know. But it's like, it's still produced in a way that would be appealing to men, and that's not how I view sex and witchcraft. It's totally about, yes, men can be witches, but I'm going to mostly speak as like women. We were talking about sex magic in one of the past episodes, and it's a way for us to harness and hone that energy and that magic and to release it. Yes, it can be hot. It can be, like I do sex magic as well, and it's great, but it's just annoying that that's all that's portrayed in the Hollywood and in the media. It's like these young maiden 16-year-old girls exploring witchcraft and their puberty and sexuality, and they're screwing the jock or something, and it's just like that's
I love how it's not just witchy movies, it's all movies,
it's
period.
all movies,
but it's the 16-year-old girl losing her virginity and she's like enjoying it. And
it's
I'm
still,
like, no, 16-year-old girl is enjoying losing their virginity. I'm sorry, it's not a fun time the first time. Like, it's just not.
It's yeah, no, that's my only problem with it in the Hollywoodization of witchcraft and seeing witchcraft in the media. Don't get me wrong, I love a lot of these shows, but that's the only part that bothers me. It's like, okay, sure, have a sex scene just for the shit of it, just because two people are in a room together, that's fine.
And the ratings go up.
The ratings go up, but also if you're gonna make it about witchcraft, at least do one sex scene that's about
sex magic?
What
sex magic or power or something like that.
Lots of special effects.
So if you think about it, like what would a sex scene for a witchy woman's entertainment instead of a man's entertainment be?
I think it would be more the context of it. there wouldn't have to be, she wouldn't have to be like holding a wand or something.
I'm totally picturing like Sailor Moon, like and they get all like sparkly and shit.
I was
like,
picturing blood and
Honestly, that would be
magic?
great.
I don't know.
I was picturing like white lights and like just really enjoying the sense of touch.
I took
Wow.
it very dark.
But it's like the context of it. But a lot of times in the witchy shows, anytime there's sex, it's not about them performing something for magic purposes or for a bigger purpose. It's just because we have a hot actress that can portray a 16-year-old, so it's legal. Let's make a sex scene.
Yeah.
So it's like, great, that's witchcraft now. It's this.
because you know if they're 16 in the TV show, they're not 16 in real life. If there's a sex scene,
I hope not.
And you have to remind yourself that sometimes because they
Right.
look so convincing and you're like, I can't watch.
Yeah. So that's the only issue I have with it. Other than that, it's like, yeah, I agree. Witchcraft, sex is a huge part of witchcraft for a lot of us, and it should be as in everyone has to do it, but it shouldn't be a taboo in witchcraft. It's a huge primal part of witchcraft, and I wish we could see that context more in the media rather than just that hot person.
I think it's less about sex magic and more about like, for me, I mean, like being a witch and claiming that. I mean, it's all about claiming your sovereignty, right? Like it's all about your individual independence away from everybody else's opinion or control, and being open to your sexuality is part of that.
Yeah.
Particularly as women who have been raised their entire lives to like be ashamed of their sexuality, to be ashamed that they're horny sometimes, but you know, you're a prude if you don't put out. I think that's a big part of that, and I think that's part of what they're portraying in a lot of these like quote unquote witchy sex scenes. It's more this liberated young woman who's embracing her sexuality, and
It's the first time she's on top.
right?
I
So I really liked what both Aiden and Nikka were saying about like reclaiming yourself and about it being primal, because to me I find like the way I identify with being a witch is it is very primal, like it's very intuitive, and like I find that like witchcraft and sex, like they have that in common where it's very primal. And I find like the tying in of like hypersexualization with witchcraft, it's just so different now, like as compared to as it used to be, because like it used to be where like, you know, the evil witch, right? And then it would typically be a woman, of course. And then adding to that would be like the repression of your sexuality. I'm just making a comment on how much things have changed, that now like we're able to sort of, as women, we're able to sort of like embrace our sexuality a bit more. I don't really find that Hollywood witches made me feel like it was easier to come out of the broom closet or harder or anything. It was a personal decision. I was like, this has been something that I've been drawn to for a very, very long time. Like I owe it to myself. I need to explore this. Like I need to see what's out there for me. I need to try it out. Because I don't know, maybe it was more like an insecurity thing for me, where it's like I thought if I committed to being a witch, then I would be judged, or I just wouldn't be any good at it.
Are you in the broom closet though? Like, does your family know? Do your coworkers know? Do your other friends
I'm
know?
slow, like, it's very new. So, like, when it comes up in conversation, I'll definitely talk to people about it. Not at work, though, because I work in a Catholic high school. And I just don't think it would be really well received, or people would just think I'm super, or people would talk, there would be, like, rumors started, and I just don't care for that. But hopefully a new work environment will bring new things, new possibilities, yeah.
I feel like the rise in the amount of witchcraft in the media and how it's more positively portrayed now versus what it used to be has allowed, not necessarily like need permission, but because it's more mainstream and people are more seeing it more, it's easier and people can kind of understand it more because it's not always so demonized and ugly now in the media.
It's not something I've ever cared about. I'm sorry. I'm also, again, I mean, like when we go back to earlier episodes, I mean, I enjoy stirring the pot. I enjoy making people uncomfortable. So that being said, I mean, I don't run around at work because I just don't. And that's not even like, I don't really give a shit what they think about me. It's not for them, right? Like, this is for me. And I personally prefer to have a separation of work me and me. You know, I mean, it's already bad enough that like there's this blending between like mom me and me because I wanted that to be separate for so long because I felt like it was an awkward thing to kind of meld together because I'm somebody that tends to rebel against the rules, and I've got this kid that I have to give rules to, you know, make her a decent human being, but I don't like rules and I don't want to give her, but I have to, and it's hard. But yeah, I don't think it doesn't bug me either way. I'm a bad person to ask that question to.
Do you think it influenced our journeys because we grew up with the influence of the church?
Oh, I'm sure it definitely. Because, like, pretty much, like, in some circumstances, like, the stereotype of being a witch was very, like, anti-religion or pretty much is anti-Christ because in religions that follow Christ, it's like, he's the one who has all the power. He's the one who influences things when really we're, as witches, claiming that power for ourselves. So I think that there was always kind of like, we were always kind of afraid to embrace that part of ourselves because it's like, oh no, like we feel that guilt. The Catholic guilt is very applicable here. It's like, no, you can't influence things and you should feel bad if you try to do that because like, it's against God or whatever and you have to pray and self-flagellate or whatever. So I think it definitely influenced it. But I think you're right, like what you said, Sam, about like paganism, witchcraft, Wicca being like more widely accepted like in the media, and it's like especially like the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, like I find like they went right into it and I really really loved that, and that was a good show and it was a popular show and I do appreciate that, and I think like it did make it a little bit easier because you don't have that constant like threat of religion.
So when I was younger, when I first kind of came about around the age of 13, 16, I recall being in high school and, of course, being in the Catholic system. It was required to take a religion class. And I kind of kept, for the majority of the beginning, to myself. I didn't really project it much. My dad was a great supporter. I have to give him that much. He really encouraged us, which was really nice. My mother was more the Catholic, so she didn't love the idea, but she didn't deter us either. I recall being in religion class, and it was the very last religion class that I took because I had brought a Harry Potter book to class with me. That sparked quite a conversation. Thank goodness he actually waited till class was over before he took me aside and asked me why I brought this book into his class. And I didn't feel the need to defend a book that is a published book, and I simply told him, I said, it's a book. It's a fantasy book.
Popular children's
it's a children's book. It's a fantasy book.
Around.
And he disagreed with me. And I said, well, that is your opinion, and reading this book is my choice. And in that moment, it dawned on me just how close-minded the religion that I grew up with was. And it couldn't even open up to a children's book. As simple as that may be, and as imaginative as that may be, I was deeply offended by this confrontation that it deterred me away. I served as an altar girl. I had all my sacraments to that point, and there was no turning back for me.
If I remember correctly, that religion teacher, he was a piece of work.
He was something.
I remember there being an issue with him not believing in contraceptives, that he basically would put things down if anyone wanted to use condoms, and that you shouldn't use condoms and you should just be like servitude to your man and be a baby factory.
Yeah, his wife was a stay-at-home. They had over 13 children. So to each their own. They were all homeschooled because he did not want them exposed to the rest of the world to
How do
influence
you
them.
homeschool
His
13
poor
kids and go
13
to
children.
work in school?
He
Like,
does, not her. She stayed.
What a
home.
contradicting piece of shit.
Control. Talk about being controlling. Gross.
It was a very uncomfortable situation, and there was a lot of issues around him. Like, a lot of people suggested that he should have became a priest instead, and he didn't want to give up that family life for that. So, and to each their own.
He
Again,
didn't want to keep his dick.
Yeah, I was going to say it has nothing to do with the family and
No.
everything to do with the
Well,
celibacy.
then become a pastor. They're allowed to have babies and families.
Yeah, but it's not part of
It's
the
not
Catholic.
Catholic.
It's
Oh,
not
okay.
Catholic, right?
Mm-mm.
No. So it was quite a moment, like a aha moment in my life that definitely played a very big part.
I love those moments.
For me, it did deter me from coming out of the broom closet, just for the fact that by the time I was fully practicing, I was seeing a lot of what people were assuming witchcraft was. A lot of people were assuming Wicca and witchcraft were the same thing entirely, which again, nothing against Wicca, but that's just not what I do. And unfortunately, Wicca also has been stereotyped. So even if you say you practice witchcraft, you're stereotyped as a Wiccan, and then you're stereotyped as the Wiccan stereotypes, not even what Wiccans actually are. And so every time I thought about mentioning or even posting on my Facebook or social medias that I practice witchcraft, I was like, they're gonna think I'm that stereotype. And so I refrained for years, and then recently I finally created like an Instagram page just for it. And then I can represent my own craft, what it is. I've become more open about it because I want to promote the podcast, and I started to post about it on my Facebook. And I could tell some people were like, oh, okay. And then a lot of people were actually like, it was a Spider-Man meme of like they're all pointing at each other. I was like, yeah. They were like, oh my god, I didn't know you even practiced. You never talked about it. I was like, well, as for me, it was an instinct to keep it hush hush. It's so I'm still tied to the. I'm never gonna feel 100% safe with the state of the world. As long as religion is involved in politics, I will always have that instinct of being hesitant, of being fully calling myself a witch out on my platforms. Just like with my boyfriend. Like, he knows he knows I'm practicing things, but I still haven't yet specifically told him I'm a witch. If he comes up with that conclusion, that's fine. But he hasn't asked so far. It's funny, he's been asking me certain things. But he knows I do certain things, but I still haven't fully come to him and say, I'm a witch. Because again, I don't know what his mind is gonna bring up when we say witchcraft. So, and it's not because I think he's gonna hurt me, it's not because I think he's gonna do something. It's more like, oh my god, is he gonna think I'm like one of those like stereotypes? And he thinks I'm like doing weird stuff,
You are.
like glittery magic, and I think that's a spell, and I'm like, I'm crazy. I'm believing in fairy tales kind of deal. Little does he know I've done stuff while he's around, and he doesn't know. But unless he listens, sorry. Didn't hurt you. You seem to enjoyed it. So, but
it's kind of funny that you're saying this. Like, I'm pretty open about my craft.
Yeah.
But when I'm sharing stuff about the podcast on my Facebook page, I have certain, like, my mom is well aware that, like, my mom bought me so much witchy stuff for Christmas last year. It was great. Like, my mom's really open. She's totally cool with it. My brother couldn't give a shit either way. He's just like, whatever. She's doing weird shit again. Like, it's normal, right? But I have like other extended family, and I will like specifically hide my witchy posts from them. And it's not because I don't give a shit what they think. but my mom does. And I don't want to cause issues for my mom, so I just don't even bother. I just hide it from that. I mean, and this is like extended family that lives like 8-9 hours away. I don't see them very often, if at all. So I'm like, meh. My least favorite representation of witchcraft in Hollywood was The Witches of Eastwick. I just watched that for the first time in preparation for this podcast, and I hated everything about that movie. I don't like.
I think I got 20 minutes in and I was like,
Can't do this.
this is awful.
So bad. It's so bad. I couldn't. One, I don't understand how Jack Nicholson is supposed to be this like ultimate sex appeal anything, and I get it. It was made in like the late 80s, early 90s.
It's so
Okay,
it's all
okay,
the
no,
charisma.
but they wished for this perfect man between the three of them, and I'm sorry, man, if you're wishing for Jack Nicholson.
That's why I turned it off at the part where like he was on the bed trying to seduce her, and I was like, I can't do this.
So bad.
I can't do
It's
this.
so bad, and I really like. It's ironic because like we were talking about this like huge exploration of like sexuality within witchcraft and whatever. I really hated that this guy showed up and all of a sudden these three women who were previously monogamous are totally 100% okay with sharing the same man, and there was no conversation about it. It just happened because he's so charismatic, and he's not. He's not charming. He's
No.
not charismatic at all. Rose and I have had a huge conversation about who should actually be put in this role. She doesn't agree with me. She
But
loves
at
this movie.
at the time when this was made, he was one of the top actors when it came to this kind of idea.
Which is great.
Which
but
is
he's
great for
still
the
not
time.
charming.
No,
and he's still
I
not
still
attractive.
I like the
and he
character.
and that's my I think that's my biggest problem is I don't appreciate the portrayal of that character. I think it could have been done in a way that was genuinely more appealing. Like I get it. Like it's he's the devil. It's not he's not really supposed to be, but he is. Like I just
But that's the ironic part of it, is that he's not gorgeous. He's not, you look at him and you're like, wow, he's like the homeliest looking dude. But he's the perfect man.
but he's not.
But he is.
his
And the
character
whole
just,
idea was
cringe. It
supposed
was
to be
just
like that.
Gross little
Yes!
tiny ponytail.
That's the idea they wanted to portray.
No.
That your desires are not always what you think they are.
I no.
Never sell me on that character ever.
I read the book. I loved the movie. I thought it was great. But
The book is probably, and because it always is, the book is probably fantastic. I'm just saying, if you're gonna have this guy come in who's gonna, bat his eyes, and all of a sudden all of your morals go out the fucking window.
Jack Nicholson is not the one.
Right? I just think the guy needs to be more appealing. He needs to be more charming. Yes.
Let me see.
I personally think that the devil should actually be charming. I think that he should actually be appealing. I don't think he should come off like a schmarmy used car salesman.
Everything you're saying, I'm all
I
about
think that
it.
totally makes sense, because when you think about it, like this seduction of evil, like evil's not just gonna come right out and be evil. It's gonna try to
Right?
like reel you in and seduce you.
And it's going to be beautiful.
Yes.
And it's going to be seductive is the perfect word for
Yeah.
it, right?
Mhm.
Like the seduction and Jack Nicholson. Like, it's just no.
Stop hammering that picture into my head.
I just
Nikka.
picture him laying on this huge bed with that tiny freaking ponytail.
The worst representation that I've seen, like I just rewatched a part of Hocus Pocus also in preparation for this podcast, because it's like a classic. It's like so old. It's like was sort of like one of the first, I think, witchy films in a while.
30 years old. It was 30 years.
I didn't
between
realize
them.
it was
Yeah,
that long.
yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. So what I found so just like disappointing was like, of course, there's the trio of witches, and then there's the one witch, Bette Midler, who's obviously like the lead witch. She's a smart one. She knows the spells and everything. But the other two are such vapid airheads, especially Sarah Jessica Parker. She's just like, they run into this party, and then there's like a young boy, and she's like and like about to kiss him, and then Bette Midler's like, okay, like, come on, let's go. And I was just like, wow. And they're like, they just both don't seem to know anything about anything, and they're completely reliant on the main witch.
Have you seen number 2 yet?
No, I haven't. So don't ruin it. They
explain
do?
that.
Oh, okay. Well, it only took them 30 years.
Right. They explain why that
They explain that, and then they also like completely ruined Sarah Jessica Parker's character.
Yes.
Because they took away all of that, like, because now Disney's in control of it, right? So they took away all of that, like, overt sexuality and that vapidness that she has, and it basically makes her character entirely useless.
Very empty. Just like a big child.
Yeah, like there's just no purpose for her
She was
anymore.
supposed to be sexy and seductive and draw people in.
Yeah.
That was her role.
Okay.
She was supposed
Which is why she sings that song.
She lures.
She lures them in with her voice.
Yeah.
And that was her role.
And her beauty.
And her beauty. Yeah.
Wait, did she do that in Hocus
In the first
Pocus?
one. Yeah.
In the first one, she's the one that sings. She sings the "Come little children, I'll take you." Yeah, right.
And then 30 years later, when they're resurrected, she's like,
She's
wait,
empty. Yeah. She's very, very
Because it's been Disneyfied, and Disney
Fucking
doesn't
Disney,
do sexy.
For me, it's not a specific character or a specific witch from a specific movie. It's when you're watching a horror movie, and then it seems like they ran out of creativity for their story plot, and they're like, let's blame it all on a witch from the 18th century. Oh my god. Like, there's all these things that can happen in a horror movie or a thriller or something, and it's like, right at the end, it's like, and this is the explanation, a witch! And it's like, but there was no mention of this. It's just, we have to find a way to explain all of this scary stuff that we spent thousands, millions maybe directing, and it's like, it's a witch! And it's like, okay.
When in
It's
doubt,
like-
blame the witch.
Exactly. So for me, it's just that. It's like, great. So the witch is always, if something's happening in your house, it's a witch that's probably buried in your basement or something.
18th century witch. Because
Yeah.
they were all bad
Yeah.
in the 18th century. Every other
Apparently,
century is
16th
okay.
century, was or 17th century wasn't a thing.
Well, it's kind of like how people only get haunted by, like, the 18th and 16th century ghosts. Because, I mean, if you happen to see someone in, like, 80s garb, you're like, what?
You laugh.
Yeah,
You're
I
not
really want to
scared.
see
You're
a
like,
ghost in 80s aerobic.
You know? This is what I want for my haunted ghost.
Right?
Yes.
Neon colors.
Yeah.
Anybody else with bad witches in the media?
I never really felt that anything was bad because
I was never
it's
offended.
like I was never offended. Yeah,
Yeah.
but it was, you got to take it with a grain of salt, right? It's like that what they're telling of the story. Just enjoy the story. Yes, it may be ridiculous, like Hocus Pocus. I adore that movie. I watch it every year. It's one of those things that you got to do every Halloween. But it's like the way they do the witches, it's like it's ridiculous and campy, but it's part of the aesthetic of the story. And so no, it's like I've never been offended by the way they would portray a witch as evil or ridiculous. It's, you just gotta enjoy the story for what the story is.
One more quick one. American Horror Story Coven.
I love that show.
It is amazing,
say.
but it was just like, I don't remember exactly what her name is in the show, but she's got blonde hair, and she's just like the real sort of like mean girl vibe. I really didn't like that. Just the mean girl vibe emanating from her seeming.
I forget what her name is, but
only
she
way
was,
for her
like,
to communicate
one of
is
the
a
main
mean girl.
characters, yeah.
Yeah, no, the show was amazing. I love American Horror Story. Like, she just really bothered me. And then like this, there was supposed to be like a head witch emerging in this story arc, and then it turned some of the witches that were sort of all living together like really selfish. Like, they were just, in it for their own personal gain. They all wanted to be this like amazing main head witch.
But that's what power does to people.
Yeah.
and then the thing is, like, if you rise to that position of power, you're like, you rely on the people who are like lower than you to give you power. And anyways, I just really didn't like how they got really selfish and then the mean girl vibe.
So my question is for Sam and for Kristen, I'm so sorry. As new witches, do you find that for yourself or for other new witches like you, do you find that Hollywood influences the opinion of what the expectation of witchcraft is?
Certain archetypes of the witch, like the evil witch, definitely, like, I've seen it influence the people around me. Like, when I recently sort of told people that are close to me that I am a witch, I'm learning about witchcraft, like, their automatic assumption would just be like, okay, well, don't you, like, you know, like, don't use your powers for bad, or like, don't hex people or whatever. And then I'm like, exactly, like, I'm looking at Sam and I'm like, my reaction is just like the friggin' eye roll, where it's like, where did that judgment come from? Like, it was just you so quickly leapt to that. It's like, do you know me as a person? Do you really think that I would do, like, cause harm and do evil things on purpose?
I think that, and we were actually kind of talking about this with the Pinterest thing the other day. Faye, are the witch's best friend. There is a certain level of discernment that comes with the maturity of age. So for me, because I started getting into my practice at an older age, I feel like I was able to use a level of discernment and decide, like, you know, this is obviously Hollywood witchcraft. I cannot replicate this. And I also follow a lot of my own, like, intuition and what I'm drawn to and what I feel clearly the universe is like, hello, you're going over here. But I do feel like for younger witches, like with you in the craft when you're a teenager, I can see why you would be drawn to that and try really hard to fit this, because that's what you're drawn to. But with age,
right? That was like my life goal, was to be that.
Yeah. With age comes a level of calmness and the ability to discern what is witchcraft truly and what is your practice versus what is in Hollywood.
I completely agree with that too. Yeah, like, once you reach a certain age, you're just like, okay, I'm not going to believe, like, kind of all the garbage that's in the media, because it never really portrays things accurately anyways. Why don't I just meet some people and just see what they're like and learn about them?
Yeah.
I find in the witchy groups, like, online, there are a lot of people out there that have very unrealistic expectations of what witchcraft can achieve for them. And I do feel like part of that is, like, just succumbing to that image that's portrayed in the media through Hollywood and stuff like that of what witchcraft is. And I think another part of it too is social media itself. You know, I mean, it's people posting all of this wild, wonderful stuff on social media, and everybody just believe, like, witch talk. Oh my god, witch talk. But I mean, it's this completely unrealistic portrayal of what witchcraft actually is and what it can achieve for you. And I think it's honestly kind of damaging. That's more social media than Hollywood, but I think that plays a part in it.
It's
I think
work.
I think it's damaging.
Every day.
And I think that's what a lot of new witches
Exactly,
don't
yeah.
understand is that you have to work at this. It's
You can't
not
just
an
wave your
easy,
hand.
like,
You can't
snap
just
your
wave
fingers.
your wand. Exactly.
The amount of times I see, like, again, on the witch Facebook pages, and I'm pretty sure we talked about this and I brought it up on our first episode, was how people describe, like, this huge problem they're having. Like, their ex who abused them is now stalking them and this and that. It's like, yeah, sure, you can do a spell, you can
But
do
have you
witchcraft,
called
but
the cops?
have you
Right.
filed a restraining order?
Yeah.
Like, that way your spell can actually back that up. You
Yeah.
can't just be like, they'll write a whole paragraph of this history of whatever they're going through, and then any spell recommendations, and it's like,
Don't tell me to call the cops. I don't want to do that. I hate it when they, like, put that caveat
Yeah.
there. They're like, don't tell me to call the police. I'm not doing it. And I'm like, oh, okay.
or like, at
But
least
you're willing to fuck with forces that you
Yeah.
clearly don't know much about.
like, they're not willing to do the mundane work.
Yeah.
Right.
They
Keep
think
going
it's,
back to that.
Yep.
it's
Yeah.
they think it's just like
It's
bippity boop, and it's
Exactly.
like, there's your spell, and it's like, no,
No.
you can burn all the rosemary you want.
It's not gonna
If you're not
yeah.
doing the mundane work, it's not gonna do anything.
I find, like, also like Nikka was saying, just the instant gratification that is social media. You can just keep going from video to video to video, and there's something about it that just, it satisfies something in your brain and like reinforces the concept of instant gratification, which which also supports like, okay, it's, you can't just wave your hand into it. Like, it's not, spells and being a witch is not instantly gratifying.
Yeah.
You have to work at it every day.
Perfect. I like that. That's exactly what I want to tell people. It's not instant gratification to be a witch. It's like,
I have been spending so much time at my kitchen window with my plants lately. I think my neighbors think I'm a crazy person standing at the window staring at everybody, but really I'm just taking out tiny little strands of dead plants from my things and drying my herbs and spending time with them and like talking to my plants and all sorts of things. But I'm not actually doing any like spell work with those things, but this is witchcraft. I am harvesting, I am drying, I am using and planning, and that mundane work is just as important as actively lighting the candle and sprinkling the herbs around it.
Talking to your plants is actually recommended and is good for them because they breathe in what we breathe out, right? Talk to your plants.
Yeah. And that's it, witches. The Collective's thoughts on Hollywood. Make sure to follow us on our Facebook group, Great North Witches Collective, as well as subscribing to our website, greatnorthwitches.com, to receive our monthly newsletter with additional information and an update on what we've been up to. See you there.
Bubbles. Dark basement. Scuttles. Fingernails.